They looked like heroes, shining armor, noble steeds, and songs written about their bravery. But behind the glory and pageantry, being a medieval knight was anything but romantic. The armor was crushingly heavy, the battles were filthy and brutal, and honor often meant bleeding out in a muddy field for a lord who barely remembered your name. Between endless training, crushing debt from buying gear, and the constant threat of infection or betrayal, knighthood wasn't glory. It was survival in steel. If you like dozing off to the darker real side of history, a like or subscribe would be awesome. And let me know where you're listening from. It's always crazy seeing people from Scotland to Singapore sharing the same midnight story. All right, tonight we're pulling back the visor and stepping into the harsh reality of the medieval knight. So, get comfortable, let your mind wander back in time, and discover why it really sucked to be a knight in the Middle Ages.
You are 7 years old when the path to knighthood begins, not with a sword, but with a farewell. Your parents, proud and perhaps a touch relieved, send you off to serve in the household of a noble lord. There are no goodbyes written in ink or preserved in keepsakes. Only a pat on the shoulder, a bundle of clothing, and the weight of expectations settling on your small, still-growing frame. No one asks if you're ready. In truth, readiness is irrelevant. You are a page now. The castle looms above you, stone towers stretching into a grey sky, its silhouette promising both greatness and hardship. The gate cacks open. What lies beyond is not a world of honour and glory, but one of scrubbing, serving and surviving. Chivalry will come later, after years of fetching, carrying and cleaning up, after horses and noblemen with equally foul temperaments. Your duties are endless. From sunrise to well after dark, you run errands, sweep halls, deliver messages, and assist with meals. On especially lucky days, you're permitted to polish armour, which sounds glamorous until you realise it means scraping dried mud and horse dung from heavy iron boots. Your hands are blistered, your back aches, and the knights, they barely notice you. You're not yet one of them. You are the help. But even in these early days, training begins. Wooden swords are handed out like brooms, and bruises bloom across your arms as you spar with other boys who, like you, are eager to prove something. You're taught how to fall from a horse without breaking your neck. You fall often. Some days it feels like falling is the main lesson. No one praises you for bruising well, but they do scold you for weakness. You learn quickly. Pain is to be swallowed, not displayed. Discipline is everything. Speak only when spoken to. Bow deeper to those of higher rank. Never question a command, no matter how trivial or humiliating. Your mistakes are corrected with the back of a hand, or a week scrubbing chamber pots. One boy forgets to remove his cap in the presence of the lady of the house. He spends 2 days on his knees in the chapel praying for humility. No one forgets again. If your family is wealthy, a tutor may be assigned to teach you reading, writing, and perhaps a bit of Latin. Though the Latin mostly seems useful for understanding church services and inscriptions on tombs. If not, you learn by imitation. You listen. You memorize prayers. You copy letters with shaky hands when the steward is generous enough to share a scrap of parchment. Literacy is a luxury. Muscle and obedience matter more. Still you learn. You learn which fork to use, though most prefer fingers. You learn to stand still for hours during court feasts, balancing platters of steaming meat, while nobles talk politics and complain about the wine. You learn to stay invisible when tempers flare, and to disappear entirely when drunken knights start boasting about past battles. Every moment is an education in survival. Mornings begin with Mass. The castle chapel is cold year-round, and your breath fogs in the air as you kneel on stone floors and try not to fall asleep during the liturgy. Faith is not optional. It is as much a part of your training as swordplay. You're taught to fear hellfire, to respect the church, and to confess regularly. The priests speak of divine purpose, of holy duty. You nod along trying to stay awake. Mostly you pray not to get sick. There are few remedies and fewer recoveries. Meals are brief affairs, usually consisting of bread, cheese and meat if you're lucky. Vegetables are suspect. Many believe raw greens cause illness, and so you develop a steady diet of salted meat and dry crusts. You eat quickly, knowing your next task waits. On rare feast days, there may be roast pig or honeyed oat cakes. These days are remembered for years, like dreams glimpsed through smoke. In the evenings, the hall grows lively. Minstrels sing ballads, recounting tales of Arthur and Roland and saints who slayed dragons. You sit on the edges near the fire, trying to catch every word. The songs are meant to inspire, but you are too tired to be moved. You think more of your sore feet than of Kioalic deeds. Still, something stirs in you. A hope perhaps that someday someone will sing of you. You sleep where you can, often in the servants' quarters, shoulder to shoulder with other boys, on straw pallets that smell of sweat and mildew. Some nights you are pulled from sleep to help with late arrivals or unexpected guests. You learn to rise without complaint, to work through exhaustion, to never let your eyes betray fatigue. A knight must be ready at any hour. The training starts here. You're not alone. Other pages suffer with you. You form silent friendships built on shared glances and muttered complaints. Together you learn the rhythms of castle life. You learn which knights are cruel and which will look the other way when you steal a second helping of stew. You learn who to trust, who to fear, and which corners of the castle offer a moment's peace. There are moments of levity, a jest from the cook, a clumsy knight tripping over a dog, a stolen apple. You cling to these moments. They remind you that life exists beyond duty. That laughter still has a place even here. Occasionally you catch a glimpse of the world beyond the walls. Merchants arriving with silks and spices, a troupe of performers, or a noble woman riding past with her retinue. These sights feel foreign, like stories glimpsed through fog. You're not part of that world yet, but maybe one day. At times, doubt creeps in. The stories of glory feel distant, the reality far more grinding. You wonder if all of this, the aching limbs, the scoldings, the hunger, is truly the path to honour. But every so often you see a knight ride out in gleaming armour, pennant flying, and your chest tightens with thoughts someday that could be you. Your lessons in humility do not stop with bruises and hunger. There are also ceremonies to attend, even though you're barely more than background noise in them. You observe as nobles gather, dressed in fine fabrics you're not allowed to touch, much less wear. You're reminded by their glances and sometimes their words that your position is somewhere between useful and invisible. When dignitaries visit, the castle becomes a theatre. You help prepare guest rooms, polish silver, and sweep the same corridors 3 times over. If anything is out of place, the pages are blamed, and if something goes wrong, say a dog bites a visiting bishop's leg, well, let's just say it helps to know how to avoid being seen. You quickly master the art of looking busy while being nowhere near the problem. On festival days there is music, dancing, and too much wine, at least for the adults. You're allowed to watch from the corners, soaking in the sounds and sights while pretending not to be watching too intently. Occasionally, someone slips you a sweet meat or a bit of cake, and for a moment, the burdens of your position feel lighter. But these small kindnesses do not erase the reality. Your place is to serve, observe, and remember. Some pages find escape in books if they can read. The old steward's chamber holds a handful of illuminated manuscripts, heavy, bound in leather, and guarded as fiercely as the Lord's own armoury. On lucky evenings you're allowed to sit beside a fire and listen, as an older scribe reads aloud tales of Roman generals or saints who endured unspeakable trials. These stories feed the mind while your body heals from the day's chores. There are warnings too, spoken in hushed tones or muttered by older servants. They tell you of pages who failed to advance, boys who cracked under pressure or were sent home in disgrace. Sometimes they vanish without explanation. Sometimes you overhear things you were never meant to hear. You quickly learn when to speak, when to nod, and when to keep your head down. The castle is your crucible, and every hour spent within its walls forges you into something harder, leaner, more capable. Not a knight, not yet, but no longer a child. You're a creature in transition, battered, disciplined, and quietly determined. So when you lie awake at night staring at the wooden beams above your straw-filled mattress, you think not just of what you've endured, but of what lies ahead. The next phase, the next challenge, the next step on the path that will one day, if the gods, your lord, and your body all permit, make you a knight. But for now, you are a page, and that is enough. At the age of 14, the apron strings of pagehood are ceremoniously snipped, though not with any kindness or softness. You're no longer a page, you're now a squire, and while this new title may sound like a promotion, it comes with considerably fewer sweetmeats and far more bruises. You have graduated from polishing floors to polishing armour, from fetching goblets to fetching the man who might be dying in one. Your new role is personal, intimate even. You're assigned to a knight, and you're expected to serve him as faithfully as a shadow. Where he goes, you go. If he rides into battle, you follow. If he falls, you run into the carnage to help him up, risking your own life in the process. You're no longer a child of the castle. You're the squire of a warrior, and your days are shaped by his demands. The physical training increases tenfold. Riding a war-oar, for instance, is not the elegant glide you once imagined. These beasts are enormous, bred for power and war, and more temperamental than most noblemen. Mounting them is a small battle in itself. Controlling them, a constant negotiation. Your thighs ache. Your spine jars with every step. Your backside hasn't felt normal since Michaelmas. Sword training intensifies. You now wield live blades, not to kill, but sharp enough to cause concern if your opponent happens to be better rested or less distracted than you. You spar daily, your body covered in bruises that never quite fade before new ones bloom. Every session is an exercise in humility. For every swing you land, you take 3 in return. The knight you serve doesn't expect grace, he expects grit. But perhaps the most tiresome part of your duties is equipment care. Armour, you quickly learn, is not just metal, it is an ecosystem. Sweat, grime, and the occasional slug somehow make their way into the joints of plate mail. You clean it, polish it, inspect every hinge and strap. If the greaves pinch or the helmet visor sticks mid-battle, that's your fault. If your knight dies because you missed a cracked buckle, you'll likely wish you'd died first. Weapons need sharpening daily. Lances must be tested. Shields examined for cracks. Your knight's life and your reputation depends on the absolute precision of your work. No one thanks you when everything goes right, but everyone notices when it doesn't. And then there are tournaments. They were romanticised when you were a page. Colourful affairs of trumpets and cheering maidens. Now you see the blunted swords break bones. You are the one saddling the horse, carrying the lances, wiping the blood from your knight's cheek so he can smile for the crowd. If he wins, you collect the prize money. If he loses, you collect his broken ribs and what remains of his dignity. When real war comes, and it does, you march beside your knight into mud, rain, and uncertainty. Campaigns are long, uncomfortable affairs. Food is scarce. Sleep is scarcer. Your armour, if you have any, chafes in places you didn't know existed. You begin to understand the real meaning of exhaustion when your limbs move only because you know you must. Battle is not glorious. It is a cacophony of screams, metal, and orders lost in the wind, the clash of bodies, the stench of blood and sweat, the sudden silence of a dying man. These become your education. You learn to distinguish between fear that sharpens you and fear that paralyzes. You pray the former shows up more often. You're not there to fight, not yet, but that does not mean you are safe. When your knight is unhorsed, it is your job to reach him, lift him, pull him out of danger. Imagine dragging a man in full armour, each piece weighing more than a holiday roast, across a muddy field while arrows fall like rain. It is not heroic. It is backbreaking, and the reward is usually just the chance to do it again tomorrow. When your knight is injured, you tend to his wounds. If he is captured, you're expected to negotiate or deliver messages to secure his release. Sometimes this means dealing with men who would rather see him rot. You learn diplomacy not from tutors, but from necessity. Your words must be careful, your posture humble, your tone respectful. Even your silence becomes a tool. There are moments, rare but real, when you feel proud. When you lead your knight's horse into a camp and heads turn to look, when he nods at you after a battle, bloodied but alive. These moments are fleeting, like sunlight through arrow slits, but they matter. They keep you going. Back at the castle, your duties continue. You train younger pages, passing on the same hard lessons you once learned. You serve at banquets, help organise hunts, and remain at your knight's side whenever guests of importance arrive. Your sword is worn, your boots are cracked, and you move like a man twice your age. But you're no longer a servant. You're being watched, evaluated, measured. The priests still expect your prayers. Your lord still expects your loyalty. Your body expects rest, which it rarely receives. But there is no turning back. The only way forward is through. You begin to think about your own coat of arms. What colours, what symbols. You dream about the moment of dubbing. The sword tapping your shoulders the moment you rise, not as a squire but as a knight. It feels impossibly far. It feels inevitable. It feels both. Then there are the hard days. The days when you bury a fellow squire trampled beneath a warhorse or run through by a lance that didn't look blunted enough. No one sings songs for squires. No one writes poems for the boys who almost made it. You learn to carry grief without showing it. You learn to keep working even as the ground shifts beneath you. If you are lucky, your knight teaches you more than battle. He teaches you how to think, how to judge a man's character, how to read a battlefield, how to lead. If he is wise, he teaches you when to speak and when to hold your tongue, how to pick your battles and how to lose with grace. These are not things armor can protect you from, but they are just as vital. Winter brings new challenges. You now understand that a sword is only as effective as the hand that can still feel its hilt. Your fingers crack from cold, and the metal of your knight's armor feels like ice as you buckle it on each morning. Snow turns the training yard into a mire of frozen mud. Horses slip, so do you. You do not complain. The weather-like war does not care how you feel. There is talk among the older squires, talk of glory, of rebellion in the east, of a king's summons. You listen, absorb, calculate. You've seen enough to know that glory often looks like a grave. Still you would ride out tomorrow if called. The waiting is often worse than the war. You write your first letter. It is stiff, clumsy and formal. Addressed to your parents if they are still alive and telling them little. You're not even sure where to send it, but writing it feels important, like anchoring yourself, like proving you're still someone beneath the bruises, sweat and steel. One night after a feast, your knight drunk on me, and nostalgia tells you of his first campaign. He describes the rain, the hunger, the thrill of surviving the charge. Then he grows quiet. He stares into the fire and names 3 men who did not return. You do not speak. You're meant to listen and remember. You practice daily, sometimes in secret. You mimic your knight's stance, his footwork, the way he holds his blade just before a strike. You copy everything, hoping that imitation will one day become instinct. You bleed. You limp, you learn. Then one morning without fanfare your name is called. You're to ride with your knight, not as an observer, but as his second. There is no sleep the night before, no sleep is needed. When you mount your horse, you are ready. Not perfect, not fearless, but ready. Your story is still being written, but already it is etched into the cold iron of swords, the dust of roads, the calluses on your hands. You're no longer a boy, not quite a man, but close now. You're a squire, and you're becoming. You're 21 years old, or near enough. Some squires are Ned younger, some older. But the number doesn't matter half so much as the fact that someone in authority has finally decided you're ready. Ready to kneel, ready to swear, ready in theory to kill and die with a little more official ceremony attached. There's no sudden transformation. You don't wake up with a deeper voice or a firmer jawline. You're still sore from yesterday's training, still have mud on your boots and a scar across your shoulder that won't quite heal. But this is the moment your entire youth has crawled toward your body bruised, your pride battered, your hands hardened by years of polishing, sharpening, carrying and serving. It has all led here to the day of your knighthood. It begins with solitude. You're given a chamber, small and cold, in which to pray, reflect and fast through the night. There's nothing glamorous about it, just stone walls, a single candle, and a chapel-supplied blanket that somehow manages to be both thin and scratchy. You kneel on the floor, bones aching, stomach growling, and try not to think about the warmth of the kitchens or the scent of roasting pork wafting from below. This vigil is meant to purify the soul, to prepare you to accept the sacred duties of a knight. You're expected to meditate on the responsibilities ahead, defending the weak, serving your Lord, upholding the church. In practice, you spend as much time wondering that anyone would notice if you had a sip of water or sat down for 5 blessed minutes. You're not alone in your discomfort. Dozens of squires have kept this vigil before you, some trembling with anticipation, others feigning serenity. You wonder which you are. You try to remember all the prayers, the creeds, the proper posture. You try not to think about the rumours of squires vomiting from nerves during the ceremony or passing out mid-kneel. That would be unfortunate, memorable, but unfortunate. Come dawn, you are escorted to the main hall. It is transformed for the occasion. Banners hang, candles flicker, nobles, knights and priests gather in ceremonial dress, whispering politely behind gloved hands. A hush falls as you enter. Your name is announced. You kneel. Your lord, or perhaps the king, depending on your station, approaches. He carries a sword, a symbol of service and power. It may not be his own blade. Some lords keep a ceremonial sword just for this purpose, polished to a mirror shine and never used in battle. You try not to look too closely. You try not to shake. The sword taps your shoulders left then right, the dubbing. In some traditions you're also given a symbolic slap, a reminder of the physical and moral pain you must now endure without complaint. It's less of a blow and more of a firm pat, but the message is clear. A knight's duty is not to comfort, but to sacrifice. Then comes the oath. You speak solemnly, pledging loyalty to your leye, to God, and to the ideals of chivalry. You promise to defend the weak, to protect women, to speak truth, and to fight with honour. You repeat the words with as much gravity as you can muster, though you silently wonder how many knights still live by them. With the oath complete, you rise, not as a boy, not as a servant, but as a knight. The change is subtle, internal, and yet profound. People who barely glanced at you yesterday now nod in solemn approval. Your peers clap your shoulder. Your lord offers a tight-lipped smile, which by noble standards might as well be a standing ovation. There may be a feast afterward, depending on the wealth of your lord or the mood of the court. If so, you sit a little higher at the table, drink from a finer cup, and receive congratulations from nobles you once served wine to. Some squires are ned on battlefields, their ceremony improvised amidst carnage. Others receive the full pageantry. Either way, the weight of the title settles on your shoulders, heavy as chainmail. Knighthood, as it turns out, is not a destination, but a doorway. The world does not slow down for you to enjoy your new status. Your duties expand immediately. You're now expected to lead men, not follow them, to make decisions, not simply obey, to ride at the front, not the rear. The same sword that dubbed you a knight is now yours to wield, and no one will double-check your choices anymore. If you err, it will be public, and it will be costly. You're also now accountable in new ways. A knight's word is binding. Your signature carries weight. Your absence at court is noted. Your presence in church is assumed. If you drink too deeply or speak too freely, it reflects not only on you, but on your household, your banner, and your leech. A slip of the tongue can sour alliances. A drunken scuffle can undo months of diplomacy. In short, your margin for error shrinks dramatically the moment your shoulder is tapped with a sword. Your responsibilities extend beyond battle. If your lord grants you land, you are expected to manage it wisely. That means collecting taxes, settling disputes among peasants, maintaining roads, and ensuring the harvest is strong. Knights are often imagined as warriors alone, but in truth they are administrators, enforcers, and landlords. Your sword may rest in its scabbard for months at a time, but your seal is pressed into wax almost daily. You also now have your own squire. The irony is not lost on you. He is young, uncertain, eager to please. You teach him to polish your armour just so, to saddle your horse without bruising its hunches, to pour wine without spilling. You correct him gently at first, then more firmly. He reminds you of yourself. It is humbling and slightly amusing to see how far you've come and how far you still have to go. There is also the matter of your coat of arms. If you haven't had one before, it must now be chosen. Colours, symbols, family mottos, they all matter. They identify you on the field of battle and in court. They speak before you do. A red lion rampant on a field of gold says something very different than a black cross on a white bend. Choose wisely or pay a herald to help. Your new armour is fitted to your frame, assuming your lord is generous or your family still has coin to spare. Full plate is expensive and every piece must be custom made. Greaves for your legs, gauntlets for your hands, a cuirass for your chest. You stand still as the blacksmiths measure and clink, their fingers leaving soot on your skin. The weight is impressive. Walking in it feels like learning to move all over again, but you feel safe inside it too, as if metal might guard not only your body but your name. You take your first formal ride through the village, not as a servant trailing behind a retinue, but at its head. Children run to the roadside, old men bow stiffly. A woman tosses you a flower. You try not to look too pleased. The peasants don't cheer exactly, but they do stare. And in the medieval world, attention is a kind of applause. That night, in the solitude of your chamber, you remove each piece of armour slowly, methodically. You place your sword with care. You stare at your reflection in the polished plate and try to see what others saw today. A knight, a protector, a leader. You do not quite believe it yet, but you will. Everything changes overnight. You still train each day. You still wake early and pray. You still limp after a long ride and yubwas when a blade catches your elbow. But your name is called with more weight now. You are consulted, not commanded. The youngest squires eye you with something like awe or fear. Possibly both. War will come again. You know this. And when it does, your position in the vanguard will be expected. No more standing behind a shield wall. No more waiting for orders. You will lead the charge, raise your voice above the den, and be the first to cross the field. If fortune favours you, you may return with honour. If not, your coat of arms will be carried home without you. This is the cost of the accolade. This is the burden of the oath. But still, you are proud. Not of your status, but of your survival. You endured the long years, the cold vigils, the humiliation, the training, the fear, and now you wear the title as a second skin. You are a knight, and your real service has only just begun. You do not become a knight and immediately feel powerful. You become a knight, and then you are handed 60 billion of steel and told to get on a horse. The first real lesson of knighthood is not how to fight, but how to walk, breathe, and not fall over in your own armour. At first it's chain mail. They have interlocking rings that drapes over your shoulders like an iron tunic. It's not as heavy as it looks, but it clings to you, drags at your limbs and catches every drop of sweat your body produces beneath it. You wear a padded gambeson quilted linen stuffed with wool or rags, which smells awful after a single skirmish and worse after a week. But it keeps the mail from grinding against your skin like a cheese grater. As warfare evolves, so does your kit. Plate armour begins to replace mail. At first, just a breastplate and greaves. Then pauldrons for your shoulders, van braces for your forearms, sabatons to encase your feet, articulated joints, riveted segments, each edition designed to protect without pinching, though they almost always manage to do both. Eventually you are sheathed in metal from crown to toe, and it's less like wearing clothes, and more like being folded into a walking bell. The helmet is the worst. It muffles your hearing, narrows your vision, and steams up with your own breath. In battle, it protects your skull. Outside of battle, it functions mostly to give you a throbbing headache. Some helms have visors you can lift, which helps with breathing and spitting, though it also makes your face an easier target. Trade-offs are everywhere in armour. Mobility, surprisingly, is not impossible. You can run, squat, mount a horse, even roll if trained well. But everything takes effort. You're not agile. You're deliberate, and you quickly learn to conserve movement like a man counting his last coins. After all, if your opponent wears nothing heavier than boiled leather, he'll be darting around while you resemble a mobile sculpture of St. George. Then there's the maintenance. Every piece must be cleaned, oiled, inspected. A single rusted rivet can jam a joint. A dented chest plate can buckle under a second blow. Your squire becomes blacksmith's apprentice overnight, scrubbing and hammering late into the evening. If he forgets a strap or fails to fasten your quizzes correctly, you notice painfully and immediately. And let's not forget the weapons. Your sword is your constant companion, but not your only one. It is not the slim rapier of modern imagination, but a broad, weighty blade meant for hacking, not fencing. Its edge is kept sharp, but not razor thin, better to survive impact. You carry it at your side, but draw it only when necessary. The sword is both symbol and tool, and in your hand it becomes an extension of will. Then there's the lance. A knight without a lance is like a fish without gills. Useless in open battle, the lance is not delicate. It is a sharpened pole roughly 10 feet long, meant to be couched under your arm and driven like a battering ram into whoever's unlucky enough to be across the field. On horseback, it turns your momentum into deadly force, but it is also unwieldy, easy to miss with, and once broken, mostly good for poking campfires. The mace is a brutal companion, short, stubby, and blunt. No finesse, no elegance, just a lump of iron on a stick, designed to cave in helmets and crack ribs. Useful when your enemy's armour laughs off blades. When subtlety fails, the mace makes its point with savage clarity. Axes are similar, less common among knights, more typical of mercenaries or those from northern stock. But in close quarters, an axe can hook a shield, split a helm, or drag a man off a horse. It's not considered gentlemanly, but neither, to be fair, is war. Shields serve both offensive and defensive roles. You carry one, usually kite-haped or heater style, slung across your back or strapped to your forearm. It bears your coat of arms, a bright splash of symbolism amidst the mud and smoke. You learn to punch with it, to deflect, to absorb force. A good shield might save your life. A bad one might become your coffin lid. Siege weapons are a different beast altogether. Catapults, trebuchets, and battering rams handled by engineers and lower soldiers. You observe them more than operate them, unless you're particularly unlucky, but you'll learn to fear them. No armour can save you from a boulder. When battle comes, your kit is both saviour and prison. On the charge, you ride with couched lance, shield raised, visor down. Your world becomes a tunnel of noise and blur. Impact is sudden and absolute. You hit or are hit. You fall or you do not. And if you do fall, it is up to someone else. Perhaps your squire to drag you clear before the trampling begins. After the charge, if you are still upright, comes the melee. Sword drawn, you engage man to man. It is not graceful. It is a mess of grunts, blood, and clanging steel. You swing, you block, you pray. You aim not for heroics, but for joints. Armpits behind the knees, visor slits, the weak points. Every knight has them, and if you don't find theirs, they'll find yours. In the aftermath, assuming you survive, you learn the lesser-known role of a knight repairman. You remove your armour piece by piece, every dent and scratch telling its own small story. If a rivet snapped or a strap tore, it's noted, recorded, and mended. Your sword is cleaned, inspected, re-oiled. Every weapon dulled must be sharpened. You don't sleep until your gear is ready again, because next time it can mean your life. You begin to appreciate the subtle differences between good steel and bad. You learn the smiths by name, the balance of a sword, the weight of a shield, the line where a helmet should rest against your brow, all become second nature. You grow fussy about details that once seemed trivial. The type of leather used in your gauntlets, the weight distribution of a new axe, the way a visor latches shut. Some knights personalise their equipment with flair, engraved pommels, crests, etched into breastplates, gilt inlays. You may do the same if coin and vanity permit. But beneath the ornament lies the same brutal reality. Armour is not costume. It is coffin prevention. There are downsides, of course. Armour is expensive. Your share of spoils from war or tournaments often vanishes into repairs and replacements. And then there's the matter of heat. Summer in a full suit of plate is like walking inside a forge, especially in the midday sun. You sweat buckets, faint if you're not careful, and attract flies with all the grace of a walking roast. Despite it all, you come to trust your gear like a second skin. You've tested it under arrow fire. You've felt the jolt of a mace strike echo through your ribs and known the armour did its job. It protects, yes, but it also transforms. You walk taller in it. People part when they see you coming. Children point. Commoners bow. And yet you know this. The steel does not make you invincible. It merely postpones the inevitable. You can fight well, prepare thoroughly, wear the finest forged suit in Christrasendum, and still fall to a lucky spear thrust or a well-placed arrow. A knight's tools by time, not certainty. When you remove your gear at night, you do so slowly, reverently. Each strap undone, each piece lifted away leaves you smaller, lighter, vulnerable. Beneath it all, you're still just flesh, bruised, stiff, and aching. And it's in those quiet moments with your sword across your lap and your armour cooling on the stand that you truly understand what it means to be a knight. You're not made of steel, you just wear it well. And so each day begins with a familiar ritual. Lifting, strapping, adjusting, checking. Your squire tightens the buckles and hands you your gauntlets, his eyes scanning for wear, for weakness. You nod silently and step once more into the shell of your profession, because no matter how tired you are or how many scars line your ribs, you're still needed, still bound to ride out, to raise your shield to stand between danger and those who cannot. This is the life you've built plate by plate, blade by blade. This is the weight you chose to carry, and you carry it well. You were told there was a code, a shining noble creed to live by. Chivalry, they called it. The very words sparkled with promise like polished armour in morning light. It was meant to define what it was to be a knight. Bravery, courtesy, honour, protection of the weak, reverence for the church, a lofty ideal written in elegant scripts and praised from pulpit and poet alike. And then you rode into your first battle, watched a man in full heraldic splendour trample a retreating soldier and realised the code is more of a suggestion. Chivalry in theory is a code of conduct, a moral compass for those who carry swords rooted in Christian values and feudal loyalty. It began as a way to temper violence with virtue. The Church, ever anxious about the havoc wrought by idle knights, took pains to transform you from a hired blade into a holy defender. You were not simply to fight, but to fight rightly in practice. However, chivalry is like a tapestry, grand at a distance but fraying up close. The official tenets vary depending on which chronicler or cleric you ask, but some themes remain constant. Protect the innocent, defend the church, serve your lord loyally, show mercy to foes who yield, be honest, avoid unjust wars, and honour women, particularly those of noble birth. A fine list, admirable even, and also inconvenient, because in the thick of battle, no one stops to recite their virtues. You swing, you survive. You follow orders, even if they involve torching a village suspected of disloyalty. You take prisoners, yes, but mostly because they're worth ransom. Mercy has a market value. As for honesty, it's encouraged. Unless deception serves your lord better, a knight may be honourable in the abstract, but becomes remarkably flexible when land or legacy is at stake. Many a lie has been wrapped in noble language and delivered from horseback with great conviction. Protecting the weak sounds lovely in songs, but in the field the weak are often collateral. If your lord requires a peasant uprising crushed, you ride. If a convoy of commoners stands between you and the enemy's grain supply, you don't go round, you go through. The poor admire knights from afar, because they're rarely better off when one rides by. Then there is the matter of women. The songs speak of courtly love, of gallant men pining in poetic torment for unreachable noble ladies. In truth, your relationship with women is defined more by property law than poetry. Marriage is political. Romance, when it exists, is fleeting, and the protection you offer depends heavily on class. A noble woman might be revered, a washerwoman less so. That's not to say knights are uniformly dishonourable. Many strive to live by the code. They pray. They tithe. They avoid unnecessary cruelty. But the world you inhabit rarely rewards restraint. A knight who hesitates to strike might not live to deliver mercy. A man who speaks the truth too plainly may find himself without land or head. Tournaments, oddly, are where chivalry shines brightest. In these stage spectacles the rules are rigid, the honour real. You salute your opponent, you show restraint, you lose with grace. It's theatre, yes, but it's theatre where the actors believe in the script, and for a moment the code becomes reality, if only briefly. There are manuals, actual written guides that lay out knightly conduct in Florida detail. One might advise you not to strike an opponent who has lost his helm. Another might say that if a lady drops her glove, you should retrieve it without stepping on it or staring too long at her ankles. The Church writes its own rules, more focused on piety. Attend Mass, confess sins, avoid gluttony, and above all, never forget who sanctioned your right to kill. These manuals are read aloud in courts and training halls. Some squires memorise them, others nod politely and return to sword drills. In truth, the code is interpreted differently in every household. Some lords emphasise loyalty, others demand ferocity. A few take chivalry so seriously they disown sons for showing cowardice. Others knight boys who haven't seen a day of battle simply for the right marriage alliance. What you learn over time is that chivalry is not a sword to wield. It's a mirror. Some polish it daily. Others shatter it for convenience. You yourself try to follow the spirit if not the letter. You help your squire when no one's watching. You spare an enemy who's yielded, though your comrade's G. You ride back to a burning hamlet to escort a limping peasant out because a child clutches your leg and says, "Please." These moments stay with you longer than most victories. They cost little. They feel like something old, something sacred, and yet no bard will ever sing of them. Chivalry, he discovers, is not about grand gestures. It's about small decisions made when no one is looking. It's about being decent in a profession built around destruction. It's about knowing you are a weapon and choosing sometimes not to strike. Still, the tension never vanishes. You kneel before a bishop one day and torture granary the next. You cradle a wounded comrade, then trample a fleeing footman who happens to be in the way. You write your name beneath the pledge to honour and restraint, then sign orders that send starving men to their deaths. You begin to understand that the code of chivalry is less a shield and more a compass. It doesn't stop you from getting lost. It just gives you something to check when the fog sets in. Some days that's enough. In the quieter hours, you reflect on the contradictions. The songs you once memorized speak of knights who slayed beasts and rescued virgins. Sleep now. Let yourself sink deeper into that perfect relaxation. Your eyelids are heavy. So heavy it would take too much effort to open them now. Your limbs feel pleasantly weighted, impossible to move even if you wanted to, which you don't. You just want to drift all the way down into deep, restful sleep. That's it. Just let go completely. The day is done. The work is finished. Nothing more required of you now except to rest, to renew, to dream perhaps of different possibilities, different worlds. But for now, just sleep deep and peaceful, easy and calm. Sleep now. Sleep well, drifting deeper with each breath down and down into perfect, complete rest.